This is Mommying While Muslim, recorded live and unedited. Watch as Zeba and Uzma record their podcast, see their reactions, and find out for yourself what all the buzz is about.
Our trusted partner, Guidance Residential, the #1 U.S. Islamic home financing provider, is offering an exciting Ramadan special. This Ramadan, take advantage of their home purchase savings program by following 3 easy steps. Learn how to do that when you experience the guidance difference, and learn more at gr.link/Ramadan-FB-MWM-MAR23. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mommyingwhilemuslim podcast. I am so happy to be back. Although I'm flying solo, I am super excited to continue this March's series, which is Muslim Moms' Favorite Things. And we're going to jump into it shortly, but I know there's been some questions about, hey, Uzma, like you could just kind of popped the whole Umrah thing and then disappeared. What group did you use? Who did you go with? How much did it cost? What is it like over there? So many questions about the actual Umrah process and some of the details. So I'll put those up on stories so that you can see that. I know that a lot of my reels and accounts of what actually it was like are on my personal account, and not all of you have access to that. So I'll put it on our story. So look out for that, because it's very different than it was when I went 8 years ago. SubhanAllah, for better or for worse. But I had a great time. It was fantastic. I needed to go and get ready for Ramadan. This is how I chose to do it. I have done Ramadan at Umrah before. It is, it's a whole different experience and really exciting, but I'm just physically not able to do it anymore because I'm older. So check out our stories to see who I went with, how I did it, how much it cost, all of that stuff, and we'll get those details out for you. In the meantime, as I said, we are doing our Muslim Moms' Favorite Things this month, and we get a lot of questions from moms in our Facebook group, in our DMs as well. Hey, how do I start teaching my kids Islam? Usually the kids are like 2 or 3, or the moms are pregnant. They're already freaking out about it. We totally get it. Been there, done that. Who do you use to teach Quran? And then at the same time, we get a lot of DMs from Quran teachers asking us to enroll our kids and do whatnot. And in the past, we have spoken on the podcast about how we, get our kids to learn Islamic studies, how we get them to learn Quran, but we've never gone into details. So in the last year, I've stumbled upon IQRA Network, and that is what I use for my little guy. Y'all know what I think about curriculum and very regimented education for children. I'm an unschooler. That's how I live my life, and my kids live it. This son has only been in preschool when he was 3 years old and has never been in a classroom otherwise. And I just never found online education useful for little kids. Now, we did it for my older ones because that was the only option we had. And so they finished their Quran. One of them reads really well, and one of them chooses not to read anymore. So I wanted something, in the middle for my son. So we're going to go into why I chose IQRA Network, talk more with a co-founder of IQRA Network. And we don't usually have men on this podcast. So I think this is male number 7. We think that this topic is so important that we had to have a male represent, because as a co-founder, it's really, really important. And his name is Fahd al-Binali. IQRA Network is an online school for teaching Quran, Arabic, and Islamic studies, music to all of our ears, because all of us are hunting for the best resources. Fahd has his PhD in computer science, completely over my head, all of that. With a background in computing, he wanted to change the way that Quran and Islam is being taught for our kids and to make it more accessible, more engaging. I've seen what he says about it online and in the cyber world, but I'm super excited to talk to him in person, and to thank him for what IQRA Network has done for my son, who is now 8 years old, mashallah. So welcome, Fahd. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the podcast.
Assalamu alaikum, Uzma. How are you? Jazakallah khair. Thank you for this beautiful introduction. I really appreciate it. Jazakallah khair.
Wonderful, wonderful. I am awesome. A little bit jet lagged, but getting over it. We like to kick off the podcast by asking usually moms about their momming story, but because you are the product of a mother, why don't we have you talk about your mother and her momming philosophy?
My mom, I grew up in Egypt. My mom is an Egyptian. My dad is a Saudi. But I grew up in Egypt. And my mom is the most loving mother that I can think of.
Mashallah.
Uh, I love her to death. Basically, she still lives there, and she has been the kindest mother, I would say. She never pushed us really to do anything that we didn't want. She kind of guided us, and she acted throughout her life as a guide for us, but really not pushing us. Maybe you want to do this, maybe you don't want to do it. So even subhanallah, even for prayer, when I remember how she prayer was introduced, she never came and told us, okay, you have to pray, you have to do this, you have to do that. It was just a very gentle way of introducing things to us. So and subhanallah, it relates so much to how Prophet Muhammad wanted us to teach our kids, which is this gentleness. So I'm a product of a very gentle woman, basically.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Like no ship then in your history of, childhood. That's awesome because most of us were raised with pretty strong hands and that sometimes makes you go away from Islam. So it's really nice to hear that, especially because, like for Zeba and myself, we're trying to undo some of the past and, learn better so that we can do better by our children. And I think that um it is hard sometimes, especially when it comes to the salah and just daily Quran practice, to not be very like barking orders at the kids, just to remind them like, hey, did you practice? Or hey, did you pray your asr? Things like that. And it is possible to learn it. It just takes a lot of practice. So by child number 4, alhamdulillah, I figured it out. May Allah bless your mom and give her a long, healthy life for teaching you that and giving you that example and, being an example for the rest of us who are trying to do better by our children. So you gave us a little bit about your family background. So tell us what your expertise. I understand the PhD in computer science, but how does that, help you then co-found IQRA Network?
Yeah, I moved with my family after getting my PhD to Boston, and we stayed there for some time. And we did the typical thing where we took our kids to Islamic schools. We tried different Islamic schools. We tried different masjids, and it was quite challenging for us and for our kids. One is the commute was always difficult. The kids resented in many ways going there because, I mean, if I think of myself, when I have my weekend, I want my weekend to be free, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically resented that, and they having to take them stay at the masjid or the Islamic school and kind of essentially ruin their weekend in a way. Um, that's how they looked at it,
Mm-hmm.
and we acknowledge that. And I started thinking with a few of our co-founders, how can we get that result? How can we get our kids to kind of enjoy learning about the Quran, enjoy learning about Islam? How can we do that? And what we figured out is we had to kind of kind of handle the whole kind of process and kind of revamp it essentially. And the way we decided, given that my background is in technology, we said, okay, we're gonna try and establish an organization basically that essentially sources teachers from Egypt or any Islamic country where you have good educators and train them according to the standards that we have in the United States. We felt always that when we took our kids to Islamic schools and the masjid, we felt, yeah, there are some amazing sheikhs there, but in some cases, you wouldn't find someone with this sufficient expertise, background, either in education, in how to teach kids. Kids are different, right? Each one has different needs, and if you don't have kind of some background in that kind of how to educate kids, how to deal with them, how to handle a child who's not willing to cooperate, then you have a problem. If you don't have that kind of background. So we wanted to kind of bridge that gap with teachers. So we do that through a lot of training for them right now. but also through handpicking our teachers and very carefully doing that, and vetting them and making sure that they're kind of, they can adapt their style to kids who are raised in the U.S. or in the West.
That sounds really, really good, because as a former Sunday school teacher who probably had no business teaching Sunday school, I can vouch for how hard it is, A, to get the kids to go, B, to get them to pay attention, and then C, to get them to engage in the process, because a lot of these kids have very vigorous curricula at their secular school. They have like, it's insane. Kids have 3 hours of homework a night now. We didn't have homework until really until middle school, high school. And that was at most an hour. So what these kids, the pressures that they have now to compete in secular education, they don't have any energy left over. Even if it's one assignment, like one worksheet from Sunday school, they can't do it. And then the parents, I think they just assume that 3 hours of Islamic studies and Quran is sufficient for the entire week, and that um, is not something that they daily are able to push, because there's a lot of stuff on our mind and we're juggling a lot of things too. So it's really, really hard, and I think finding those quality teachers is difficult, like you said. A lot of our teachers in Sunday schools have not been born and raised in the West. So there's that cultural gap as well. So it's basically like having your aunties and uncles teach you, and they don't know what is happening in your classroom. They don't know what's happening in your home. They don't understand what's happening in your mind. And it's very different. As somebody who went to Sunday school taught by those teachers as well, that is kind of why I was a Sunday school dropout in middle school, because I just couldn't connect with the teachers. And, as a result, I couldn't connect with the content. So I lost years and years of Islamic education as a result of that. And that obviously, when we know better, we do better. We want to fix that for our children. So can you give us a brief summary of how, with these parents that you got together with at Sunday school, you realized, okay, we have to launch this thing. And now IQRA Network, I mean, to me, as a layperson, seems like this big, huge thing. How did you take it and launch it? Like, what are the logistics? How do you do that? I know you're computer science, so it's probably really easy for you, but for somebody like me trying to understand, how do you create something like this for your children then?
SubhanAllah, and when we started, it's kind of amazing because we started focusing on our kids. And the initial goal was really to provide that service for our kids. And then soon after, within the first year, we started getting a lot of our friends, a little bit distant friends sometimes, would come and tell us, it's kind of amazing, your kid read this Quran in this session in the masjid, and so, people started asking us, and then we started realizing that, okay, that problem that we faced, everyone else is facing essentially. Mm-hmm. And what we noticed is that, subhanAllah, and I don't want to say that, but a lot of kids really didn't want to learn the Quran, didn't want to go to their lessons even at the masjid. And the reason is because there was no connection with the teacher. There's no bonding with the teacher. They didn't like their teachers, essentially. So that emotional kind of connection was something that we cherished early on. And we decided that, okay, we're going to now expand, and we have to develop kind of a way of getting those teachers to value that component, which, subhanAllah, if you look at the seerah of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, most loving person, the most caring person ever. And so you see that, and sometimes you find the teacher of the Quran not doing that. But we started kind of doing that, and then as we started expanding, essentially word of mouth, started everyone telling their friends, their family, and then suddenly we started becoming, okay, 500 students, 1,000 students, and then moving upwards. So it was kind of an organic growth, sort of. But then we started kind of, as we reached the point where it became so unmanageable for us, we started systemizing the whole organization, basically.
So that's
very
how,
organic.
the web and
very
the portal.
Organic.
Yeah, subhanAllah. It sounds like that, but it's like, with 500 students, like growing that quickly, it sounds like the website, the portal, all of the instructional materials we have on there, like you had to slam that together really quickly with this beautiful team that you've curated, it seems like, across the globe. And that is just, I think it's a testament to how committed you guys were to educating your children, to educating other people's children, because like you said, we share the same problems. Like, how do we get our kids to love the Quran? How do we get our kids to practice the Quran on a daily basis, incorporate it into their lives, and to have that connection with it? And, just as proof of, that connection with teacher that you're talking about, like, my son at 7 years old, like, didn't have much of an attention span. And his idea of Quran was just, whatever he recited after grandma. So it wasn't really like fluent reading. He couldn't read fluently. It was like letter identification only. But then his teacher in particular, like, just saw his jerseys, because he always wears soccer jerseys. My son's a huge soccer fan. And his teacher's Egyptian as well. So, just talking to him about, hey, like, who's your favorite team? And this is my team. And then the teacher coming to class, not in like jalabia or anything like that, but like in a soccer jersey too. Like, hey, this is my favorite team, and connecting on that level with my son. And, to some parents that may seem like, hey, I'm paying for instruction. Why are you like socializing with my kid? I think it's so important to be able to do that and connect with the child, to get them to want to come to every session, because we've all had those situations where the child has to be literally dragged kicking and screaming to Quran lessons. That's not happening with my son. And our teacher had to take a little bit of a hiatus, and he's been having a substitute, and like, when is my teacher coming back? When is my teacher coming back, for the last few weeks? So that's really been really, like, makes my heart feel good that my son loves his teacher so much, because as a result of that, I think he's going to love the Quran. And the fact that he's so excited. I've memorized 24 surahs for my teacher. He knew 3 last year. So in the last year, he's learned, alhamdulillah, 21 surahs, just because this teacher who's talking about soccer has gotten him engaged and excited about both soccer and the Quran. You alluded to this was kind of like a family thing, and you started with your own kids. So tell us a little bit about how your family's been involved in IQRA Network.
Very involved. My kids are very involved. My wife is very involved, and I think subhanallah, this has been a blessing for us, because there is nothing really. Prophet Muhammad says, "خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه." The best among you are the ones who teach the Quran, who learn the Quran and teach it. So, and that kind of goes to practicing really the Quran, right? Living by the Quran, not just memorizing the Quran. And I think we as a whole family, we started finding ourselves essentially. I'm an engineer. I do a lot of electronics and stuff, but I'll have to tell you, this is my passion, is working for IQRA, because again, I see the results with my kids. I see the results with other families, and I'm so proud of that. And the other thing that I'm really proud of when it comes to working with IQRA is really the teachers. The teachers have been so amazing and so receptive to a new way of approaching kids in the West, like kind of focusing, like the example that you gave is perfect example. And I have the same experience with my son, who essentially runs for his lesson when he's coming back from school, and he wants to just go and talk to his teacher and meet his teacher. He enjoys the lesson. And that doesn't say that we still have very rigorous material. We prepare a lot of electronic material, yet that component is so critical. Allah Azza wa Jalla describes Prophet Muhammad in the Quran and says something amazing about Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. He said, وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ, which means that had you not had a very kind and soft heart and gentle way of the, then they would have left you. And this is it. And if you think about this testament, this gives you a principle, a pillar of how you educate others. Is you have to be very gentle. There has to be a bond, and then based on that, on top of that, you can deliver the material. You can deliver that. Allah says that the Quran, they wouldn't have received the best word of Allah unless it was for you, O Muhammad, alayhi salatu wasalam, because you're so gentle, you're so kind. So that's the principle that we try and implement. And, I think it changed our character at home and our lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah. And I know, like during the lockdown, when your family had been separated, like we could see, at the time we had no idea that IQRA Network was a part of your family at all, like no clue. But just seeing your son Isa, like give the khutbahs, for the
Yeah.
kids, and like, have that connection with the Quran and pull these beautiful lessons out of the Quran. Like it was great for me as an adult. And my kids enjoyed it so much because they were like, wow, a kid can give the khutbah. And I'm like, anybody can give the khutbah, it's awesome. You just have to know the Quran to, be able to have that connection with them, pull this out. So, my kids who never listened to the khutbah at Jummah, in the masjid, were now listening to it, not out of a need or a necessity, not just because of that during the lockdown, but also because they saw somebody that represented them, somebody that was one of their peers, pulling things from the Quran that they didn't know that they could do. They didn't think that they had that capability or that right. So it was just so beautiful to see that. And, I absolutely now understand that it's probably, obviously a testament to the parenting that you and your wife, our friend Isra, have provided for your family, but also the IQRA Network probably had a lot to do with this. So it all the pieces fit together. So when you're talking about making this palatable for children in the West, you also talk about making it practical. Like it's not just Quran, but it's also Islamic studies. It's also Arabic that IQRA Network provides to its students, whatever you choose, the courses that you want to enroll in. But you talk about making it practical, especially for students in the West. So what do you mean by that? Can you give us examples of how IQRA makes Islam practical?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the basic foundation that we have at IQRA is kind of building a bond with the teacher. And then really reading Quran and reciting Quran will not change you specifically. But you have to kind of practice. You have to take baby steps really and change. And my favorite example really from IQRA is we had a student she never pray regularly. She didn't do any of that. And once the teacher built a very strong bond with her, that student started even waking her mom for Fajr prayer. And so small changes, and they get introduced gradually. And and this is what we do with our teachers, and we ask our teachers to do is you take it step by step. Someone might not be praying regularly, but now if they start praying one salah, that's excellent. That's fantastic. That's a move in the right direction. So that's one aspect. The second thing is like I mentioned, I have a technology background. I think a lot of kids now spend a lot of time on phones, on tablets. We try and make our material accessible on those devices. This year, we're coming up with our iPhone app, and in the next few months, and our Android app, which will not still provide the syllabus material, but soon after that will come out by the end of the year, hopefully. Our material right now is all also electronic, which is fantastic because you can, for example, it does a few things. First of all, it breaks the kind of rigidity in the lesson. So you can listen sometimes, you do some questions, it makes it a little bit interactive and fun. And so we try and kind of make the material more accessible on other devices, on newer devices. And, building all of these components together, it's like putting a puzzle together to make it easier for kids to love Islam and love Quran and learn about it a little bit more.
Yeah. The app is exciting. I didn't know that was coming, but I know my little guy is really going to appreciate it because he has a phone that he's not allowed to use. But if we download it on there, it's just going to be that much more exciting for him to use my phone, not for silly games or whatever, but like to get on my IQRA app. Because right now he has to get on my computer and log on and do all of that. But yeah, I appreciate the different materials. I mean, I have not been able to go through all the material that's in the syllabus. Because there's just so much, mashallah. But I think it's because you realize, or IQRA realizes that whoever's developing your curriculum, that different people require different things. So, some of it is going to be more pictures. Some of it is going to be more instructional. Some of it is, I don't even know one of the books that our teacher uses, because he incorporates Islamic studies because he's putting the Quranic ayat into context for my son. So he understands what's happening. And I think to your point, to make small changes, that's how you get consistency, and just that's how Islam came as well. I think during one of my tours during Umrah, they were talking about how the Sahaba would like memorize 10 ayat at a time. And these are like guys in their midlives, right? A lot of them. Yes, there were younger ones, but a lot of them in midlife were like, okay, I'm going to perfect my understanding of these 10 ayat, and I'm going to live them. I'm going to do exactly what this says, the way that it says it. And then once I've done it, now I'm going to memorize the next 10. Yeah. Because for a lot of us, especially the majority of Muslims, which come from the South Asian subcontinent, just memorize, and implement nothing, understand nothing. And we want something different for our children. So those baby steps, incremental steps are so important. Now, I know the answer to this, but for the benefit of our audience, you have upwards of like 400 instructors now. So a lot of parents are very concerned about the quality of teachers. How do you assess them? What is the quality improvement process that IQRA Network has established for its instructors? So could you answer that for them?
Yeah, so we have kind of a whole HR team who is doing a really fantastic job, but we kind of, there are phases to the recruitment process. We start by kind of the application process where anyone can apply. Then we follow with a background check. We do what's called in Egypt fish wa tashbih, which means a background check just to make sure that the record for that teacher is perfect. Then if the teacher passes all of these stages, then he gets into the technical kind of assessment phase, which includes a lot of rigorous written exam, an oral exam as well. And once that process is done, we do they go through a training, which is again a very 3-week training approximately, and then a few sessions that they have to run. They're kind of sort of test sessions. And finally, they enter the organization. If they're accepted, they enter the organization, and then they go through a probationary period where they're observed very carefully. So it seems like a complicated process, but it's necessary. It's necessary. And finally, I would say then after that, there is approximately every 3 months one mandatory session, approximately 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours, that they have to attend to kind of go over a few things. So it's a continuous process, and I'll have to say it's evolving also. It evolves rapidly because we change things depending on the circumstances. But again, that's kind of the procedure, and we are very serious about it because we want to make sure that because the teacher is with kids, and we want to make sure that the teacher has the right background. I mean, there is always a risk there, right? Once someone you don't know is teaching your child, right? And we want to make sure that this is that it's a safe environment and that the teacher is well vetted. So we make sure that that is the case. And our acceptance, I would say, in terms of the applications is maybe around 5%. So we got a lot of applications, but it's 5% probably make it through. Yeah.
That's amazing. So like super like pyramided, I guess. Inverted pyramided. Like you're funneling them out.
Surprisingly, a lot of people apply. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, subhanAllah. I can attest to that just based on how many Quran teachers from all over the world contact us, and are like, promote us. And we're like, no, we only promote who we use, and, who's vetted and stuff. But, you had talked on earlier about how it's kind of like a team at IQRA. And I can attest to that because we have a coach. And the coach contacts us and like kind of keeps in touch, like, how's it going? Do you have any questions? Sure, like, let's talk about the assessments for your kid. Now, I have to admit, I've utilized none of that because I'm like, oh, everything's fine, everything's great. But can you talk a little bit about that coaching process and, how that helps with this quality improvement and quality measures?
Yeah. So this was 2 years back. We didn't have the concept of a coach, but now everything has a coach, right? You have to have a coach.
Everybody has a
But
coach.
but really, I mean, there is there is a good reason behind that. One is we want to make sure that the student is progressing, and we don't care how fast it is. Really, we care if it's faster, that's great, but
Mm-hmm.
we want to make sure that the student is actually learning something. And
Mm-hmm.
we decided after some time that it's necessary to have someone who is not the teacher, who's monitoring the process and regularly doing these assessments and
Mm-hmm.
making sure that this and figuring out essentially why is the student not reaching their goal, for example, and then kind of adapting the process accordingly. That might include things such as changing the material. The material is too hard for the student. Maybe the student is getting bored. Maybe he needs another subject that will kind of make it a little bit easier for him. Maybe the teacher is not a suitable teacher for that student. Maybe the teacher, we need a different type of teacher, different approach. So that's really the process. And that's why it's so critical. I always encourage, even for my kids, I don't meet regularly with their coach.
I know. It's
Even for
hard.
myself, I'm a student, by the way. Also, I'm a student of IQRA. I haven't met my coach, but I still think the process is kind of very effective. And
Mm-hmm.
definitely, we found a lot of cases where they changed stuff and how the lesson is even structured, and that led to better outcomes.
Yeah. And like, in terms of the only time I've reached out to the coach really is like, oh, I have to change the schedule because such and such happened. So
Yeah.
can we figure this out? And they've been really receptive, and like, the turnaround is like 24 hours or less. So it's been really helpful in that sense for me, because as a busy mom, like, I don't have, everything's color coordinated on my calendar. So it just has to work. So in that sense, it's been really helpful, but also a comfort to me to know that if there's ever a concern, because I always had that with my older two, like, why aren't they progressing? What's happening? And then with my daughter, when she had the same Quran teacher they did, why isn't she like doing what they're doing? Is it because she's a different kid? Is it because she learns differently? Or is it because the teacher just got bored? And it turned out it was kind of like the latter. And we didn't have an accountability process, and we didn't have a coach to kind of guide us and check in with us and see, are you happy? Are you not? Again, that quality measure wasn't there. So that brings me to our next question.
Can
Go
I add
ahead.
just a quick
Yeah.
Can I add just a quick thing? One of the things that we're doing is all of our material now is becoming electronic. So we are tracking also what students do during the session. So we know they answered that question right, they answered
Mm,
that question wrong. It's coming now to a stage where it's going to be possible for us to kind of inform the coach where the gaps are,
mhm.
where are the problems. So it's not going to be just a reactive thing as it is right now. It's going to be more proactive, where they can kind of initiate that process if there is a change that is necessary.
Oh, wow. So that means I have to start like being accountable too, and check and make sure he's doing his work online. That's awesome. I'm just like, did you have
I
fun
don't
at
mean
your
to scare
session? It's like, what surah do we have to memorize this week? Tell me. That's like
you.
it. Those are my two questions. Did you have fun? And what surah are you memorizing? So that's awesome. Um, it brings me to my next question. there are a lot of online Quran programs. And, you know, it's hard for those of us who had like a one-on-one connection with our teacher and were taught in person. So, but it's a whole new world, right? Every generation has something different that they're going to learn. And we know this from our Sunnah as well. So what makes IQRA Network different than everybody else that's out there? Why should parents sign up with you versus with them?
Well, I can't speak for the other programs out there, but what I can say for IQRA is one is we really care about, and that sounds like cliche, but we care about the student actually learning and getting reaching their goal. So we keep a very close eye through the whole process. What's happening on a per session basis, every report, we track that very carefully. That's one important aspect. But a second one is our affinity to technology. We're planning, it's our plan, and it's definitely in process right now, where we're changing all of our material into a electronic form. And that's really attractive for especially the younger kids, because my daughter, when she comes back from school, she, guess what, she does a lot of her homework on her phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she does that, and she enjoys it, and it's effective. So we're changing that material. Instead of you spending too much time on whatever app on your phone, we're going to give you the IQRA app, and you're going to have that. A lot of institutions do not have that as probably do not have that. I don't know again, but they don't have it as a high priority as we do, because we're really have expanded our engineering team to do that. So we have like maybe 10 engineers now working just on these apps. So hopefully that's going to make us very effective with kids and younger kids and even adults.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think all of us are working, all us and other institutions, towards the same goal, which is learning Quran, making it part of our lives. So I think the goal is the same, definitely. And whatever path you choose, whatever path suits you, is going to be fine, inshallah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now, and I've used other programs for myself, online Quran, and it is, yeah, you know, even those that had an app, it was just very different. It was run, um, it was it was good because it was flexible, but it was bad because it was flexible, because
Mm-hmm.
there's not that accountability, right? So you don't necessarily meet with the same teacher every single time. And then there was like this whole, oh, you have to now recite with proper tajweed, like in an online class in a room, and you can't see anybody's face, but at the same time, it's very daunting. And so my kids were like, absolutely not, we're not doing this, you know? So that was like trial period. They ended that. So this, I think, is more universal, less intimidating. And again, the accountability process, the fact that there's a coach, the fact that the teachers are trying to have a relationship with the kids, I think that that's important. They're not wanting to get in and out of the lesson. They're not falling asleep during
Yeah.
the lesson, which is things that we've all had to deal with in the past, especially with online teachers. So yeah, and they stay on screen the whole time so you can see who the teacher is. It's just something that I'm really glad that my family invested in. So I hope that other families consider IQRA Network. There is a little bit of name confusion. So can you just allude to that really quickly? Because I've done this too.
Yeah,
What?
yeah. But just let me add one thing. One thing that I want to emphasize: it's so important to make Quran Islamic studies part of our, kind of weave it in our kind of
Daily
whole week,
life. Yeah.
basically
Hmm.
daily life. And that's so important, because another thing that I think so helpful for us is that, and I think is very unique for us, is the fact that once the lesson is done, you still have access to material through our portal,
Yes.
which is so important, because then you can engage with that material over and over and over, and that's really what produces results. So In terms of the name confusion, yes, our name is IQRA Network. So there are other institutions like IQRA Online, IQRA Institute. These are not IQRA Network. It's a different organization. And we've had several situations where people confused us. So just make sure it's iqranetwork.com.
Yeah. Yeah. I did the same thing too, because I was trying to find our teacher and I contacted the wrong IQRA. And then they were like,
Yeah.
are you sure you don't want this one? And I was like, oh, look at the logo. So that's what's really important. What you have offered one lucky listener today is one of your programs at IQRA Network entitled Perfect Prayer Surahs. And this is a guide to pronounce the most commonly used surahs, because I mean, what the average Muslim knows, like maybe 50, 60 that we use on a regular basis, but the most commonly ones that we use in our 5 daily prayers, and how to pronounce them correctly, because we know that pronunciation is such a huge thing, especially because the majority of the Muslim world is not Arabic speaking. We pronounce things incorrectly. It's so important to get every letter correctly. So tell us why you chose this course to give away, and then tell us what the code word is that you chose for one lucky listener.
Okay. So the Tajweed is kind of a foundational course, in my opinion. And specifically, we're going to focus on Surah Al-Fatiha and the short surahs. Everyone might say, oh, Fatiha, I know the Fatiha. But
I know.
Guess what? I speak Arabic and I grew up in Egypt. And the first thing that I asked my teacher to do is I told him, listen to Al-Fatiha and please correct it for me, because it's so important. It's a requirement in the prayer, right? So it's a course that focuses on really the short surahs as well as Al-Fatiha. But what it does, it helps you perfect your prayer, which is so important, which is the basis for Islam, which is prayer. So that's why I picked this course. And the keyword is a very easy keyword.
Okay.
Should I mention it right now?
Yes, we need to mention it so that our listeners can get it back to us. Tajweed. Okay.
Yes.
Tajweed is basically the study of the correct pronunciation of Quranic Arabic. Yeah.
Correct.
That's for our non-Muslim listeners who are like, what's the big deal? It's like, no, this is the big deal. It's really, really huge. So the code word is going to be Tajweed. So whoever gets back to us first via email, salam@mommyingwhilemuslim.com, or DMs us at Mommyingwhilemuslim Podcast on Instagram or on Facebook. First come, first serve. The first person that gives us this code word Tajweed is going to get referred over to Fahd al-Binali, and we'll give him the contact information so you can get signed up for the Perfect Prayer Surah. And I can tell you, one of my Quran teachers, I was in college, tried to reteach me the Fatiha, and it took her no less than 3 months. It's 7 verses, 7 verses that I had been reciting my entire life. And I had to relearn all of it because, we don't have a difference between the ha and the ha in South Asia. So it's like to have to relearn that was so hard. And subhanAllah, it's amazing how just concentrating in your prayer on pronouncing the ha and the ha correctly, like changes your prayer. It's like, it's a whole nother level of khushu, or involvement, engagement in your prayer. And, I don't know why it works, but it makes your salah better. It makes your prayer better. There is something that we do. Is there anything else that you wanted to say about IQRA Network before we kind of come to a close?
I think the only thing is just making sure that your kids, your family have part of Quran in their life. That's so important. That's our mission. That's our goal. So whether it's with IQRA or anyone else, I think this is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we talk a lot about modeling on the podcast. And so if as moms, I know we have 1,001 things to do every single day, but if our kids don't see us reading Quran or reciting Quran at some point during the day, we can't expect them to do what we don't do. If we don't make time for Allah in our lives, in Quran in our lives, the kids won't learn to do that. So again, modeling that is really, really, really important. And if it means that we have to take a course in order to do that for them, then, start there, because we always fill up our cups before we start, trying to pour into our children. So we really need to have that love of the Quran and love of Allah before we can pass that on. So thank you for all of that. I hope people are fired up and excited to learn more about IQRA Network. In the meantime, to kind of close, we like to get to know our guest a little bit better by providing a series of rapid fire questions. The correct answer is always the first thing that comes to the top of your head. We put 90 seconds on the clock, and it's like whatever the first answer that comes to your mind, that's what you say. So are you ready for this one?
Sure.
Or completely like scared?
No,
Super
I'm
easy.
fine.
Alhamdulillah. So we always start with, what book are you reading right now?
Imam al-Ghazali.
Imam al-Ghazali?
I can't remember the title.
Is it the most famous one?
No, it's giving a description of kind of linking the surah, like al-Baqarah. What's the theme of the Surah al-Baqarah? What's the theme of Ali Imran? It's one of his late books. Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to look that one up, and hopefully we'll get a link to that into our show notes. If you could eat one dish for the rest of your life, what would it be and why?
It would be fish, some sort of fish dish. I would say salmon or something like that. Yeah. Why? Because I like fish.
Okay, a lifetime of salmon. I like salmon, but not that much. Yeah, but that's the first. Okay, like no problem. What's your favorite? What's your favorite holiday between the two Eids? Which one is your favorite?
Between the two of Eids, I would say the Eid al-Adha.
Okay.
Because I got
How
more
come?
days. Like that. Yeah.
You get more days? Okay.
Yes.
What is your favorite animal?
My favorite animal is, I think the cat. Cats. I like cats.
A cat. Okay. Is that just because of Abu Hurairah?
Yes. No, because we had a cat, and I think I had a strong bond with that cat, so I miss that cat. So I just like cats.
That's so funny. That's awesome. Well, I hope you get another one in your life, inshallah. Are you an explorer or a homebody?
I think I'm an explorer. Yeah, I like
Yeah,
I
definitely.
like new ideas. I like traveling. I like going to new places. I like kind of doing something. My life has been always in startups, so I like everything new. Challenging.
An adventure. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, if anybody wants to learn more about your adventures, they can actually find you on House Hunters International, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That's something that you didn't
We
mention.
have an episode in Granada,
Yeah.
Spain. Yeah, that's true.
Yes. Yeah. Mashallah. So if you want to look that up, you can look that up. And it's a testament to Fahd al-Binali and his family's adventurous spirit. So that closes our rapid fire. Thank you so much for participating today. Again, the code word to win the Perfect Prayer Surahs course, the program, I believe it's 8 lessons for free. From IQRA Network, the code word is going to be Tajweed. So either email that to salam@mommyingwhilemuslim.com or DM at Mommyingwhilemuslim podcast, and we will happily share your information with IQRA Network so that you can get signed up for those. Perfect in time for Ramadan so that you can perfect your prayers, because that's what we'll be doing a lot of, inshallah. Jazakallah khair today for coming on, Fahd. We really appreciate everything that you're doing at IQRA Network and for our community, our children. Our trusted partner, Guidance Residential, the #1 U.S. Islamic home financing provider, is offering an exciting Ramadan special. This Ramadan, take advantage of their home purchase savings program by following 3 easy steps. Learn how to do that when you experience the guidance difference, and learn more at gr.link/Ramadan-FB-MWM-MAR23.